Hello, good evening, and welcome back. So, debunkings are fun, refutations are fun, but it gets to a whole new level when you debunk the debunking, when you refute the refutation, and that's what we'll be doing this evening. So, Bill Gates says he's shocked by crazy and evil conspiracy theories linking him to COVID-19, including claims he wanted to use vaccines to microchip billions. And they have three main claims in this article. The first one is that he wanted vaccines to drop the population of the world, because that is explicitly what he stated in a TED talk, but that's just conspiratorial nonsense, even though he said we've got overpopulation is one of the biggest problems and vaccines are a way to cure the overpopulation problem. So, okay, cool. The next one is, of course, they say here that he wants to use vaccines to microchip billions, and that is based off of the idea of immunity passports in third world countries where it's very difficult to keep your paperwork on you and to have records of who has received what medication and treatment and has what history of illness, in which case it would be far easier in order to microchip something under somebody's skin, like an RFID implant, so that could then be read by a scanner instead of people having to carry around documents or try and find them, especially when these things get lost because people are traveling around a lot. And that, as far as we know, has not actually been trialed on people yet, but it has been done on cadavers. And the other one, which is the main one, is saying that it would the vaccinations would no doubt cause 700,000 people to die, and that is from an interview where he was talking about side effects of vaccinations, where yes, they could well be, but the risk of side effects from vaccines is lesser than the effect of not having a vaccine and catching the illness or the disease that you're being vaccinated against. And he mentioned that it could just be 1 in 10,000 of people dying instead, which is supposedly better than catching the coof, which we know isn't true. But if it was 1 in 10,000 and you vaccinate the population of 7 billion people, as max vaccinations are the idea that you want to do it globally, then 1 in 10,000 of 7 billion is 700,000. Of course, then you can go into the other ones of saying, the baseless conspiracy theory of putting abortion things into vaccines for Kenya. And you go, well, is it a baseless conspiracy theory when the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation pled guilty to purposefully sterilizing the population that they're vaccinating? So this isn't a thing if there's an accusation and it's never been proven and it got settled out of court, or there wasn't enough evidence and it was just an allegation. No, this is where they pled guilty. By all means, they pled guilty because the punishment was not as severe by pleading guilty than actually letting it go through and pleading innocence. But they didn't. So either they're hiding something worse, but would be worse than purposefully sterilizing people, or they're guilty of it by their own admission. Or, of course, you could go out to India, where now the majority of polio cases are from his own vaccines. And these are all statements of fact. By all means, double check if you wish, but we're going to be using the same set of sources as they are. And, of course, Computing Forever goes into more depth if you want specific statistics on these details. So I do have earlier videos which break it down, going from the original literature, if you are that way inclined. But let's go through the article and see if they've got anything worth saying, because of course trying to do a refutation is difficult, because the proponents of evidence should be on the person raising the claim, and hopefully I've helped with what I've just stated. But nonetheless, let's give them the benefit of the doubt and go through it, as there are actually a couple of good things to mention. and one of which, in case we don't get to it, is to say that conspiracy theories seem to basically be just a thing of human nature. It's just natural. And who is a ordinary target? Well, it's going to be somebody who is rich and powerful. And what is the conspiracy theory going to be about? Well, it's going to be about something that people are particularly susceptible to at the time. So, obviously, you've had Rockefeller and George Soros and the Koch brothers. And so now you've got Bill Gates, and that's going to be twinned with the coronavirus because they're topical, essentially. And so they're saying, well, hey, none of these other conspiracy theories had any credibility to them whatsoever. Except, of course, you can see where the Koch brother funding was going. You can see what Rockefeller got up to, and the effects of the Napoleonic Wars. You can see where Soros has put his money into, and whether that's EU funding or if it's out to election funding. You can see that. So again, these aren't baseless. Sure, conspiracy theorists might let their imagination run wild and take things to an extreme, and at that point they no longer conform to reality. But all of these start from a point of truth, and if you can't stop people at the first hurdle, then things will inevitably snowball. So let's read on. Bill Gates said he's shocked by the volume of evil conspiracy theories involving him that have come to light since the beginning of the pandemic. And it isn't him, but his wife instead, that is saying, well, misinformation is worse than the virus itself. Therefore, it is down to the government to step in and regulate what can be said on social media, because clearly the positive out of all this, the thing that governments can do first and foremost is just ban dissent, because that's the safe thing to do. Because don't you know that we're correct and always correct, and with Bill Gates saying that Anthony Fauci was one of the few sane people in the US government department when Trump was in office, and Fauci has also, of course, admitted to lying to the public when it comes down to effectiveness of PPE, saying that you don't need to wear a mask simply because he wanted to buy it up. Similar to what China did, of course, or Xi Jinping, saying, oh no, don't mention to anybody that there's human-to-human transmission of this virus. In fact, don't mention it at all, and we will lock you up and throw away the key or just harvest your organs if you do try and speak out, and then concurrently tell all his businesses to buy PPE from the rest of the world. There's things like that. Or, of course, herd immunity. Oh, it's 75%. No, it's 85%. Because he said, well, I didn't think people were ready for the truth, and so I just tried, get their hopes up. I said, well, if you're concerned about not being taken seriously in the first instance, and that people won't believe you and they will mistrust you, then do everything that you can to avoid adding fuel to that fire. Really do. Don't just come out and acknowledge that, yeah, you lied about that, and you're changing your tune now. You're not helping. You're really not. By all means, you might be under more scrutiny than other people, but when you're on the highest paid salary of all public workers, Dr. Anthony Fauci, of all the millions of federal employees, you're paid the most. Maybe you need a little bit more credibility. Moving on to the second point. Gates, who has donated $1.7 billion to coronavirus research, has been accused of developing COVID in a lab and plotting to use vaccines to microchip billions. In terms of plotting it in a lab, that, as far as I can see, is a bit more tenuous. That, obviously, a few years back, when they had their global committee together to say, how do you think things will progress? One of the options was a global pandemic, and they used a coronavirus as an example of that. Of course, coronavirus has crossover with the rhinovirus, meaning the common cold. Similar with the Spanish flu, that is quite an obvious one to pick. Flu is quite an obvious one. You got the Spanish flu, bird flu, swine flu. That it's a bit tenuous, and go down that route if you want, but personally I'm going to need a little bit more convincing. When it comes to him creating it in a lab, well, of course, there was crossover between Canada and China, but that doesn't seem to have had Bill Gates involved. So, again, it seems that He's just not letting a disaster go unused. That's as far as I can see. I don't think he was responsible at all. He's just taking advantage of the situation that he's opportunistically found himself in. So he said he calls the theories evil and said he hopes it goes away. Well, yeah, of course you do, because you can't refute it. And in the first few months of the pandemic, between February and April, conspiracy theories and misinformation linked Gates to the origins of COVID. Because of the article, as I say, of planning for a global pandemic and using a coronavirus as an idea, and seeming to be quite accurate as to what the world will do. Then again, if they kind of wrote out a global plan, of course it's quite accurate to what the world will do because they're telling them what to do. Then in May 2020, a poll found that 28% of US adults believed that Gates was plotting to use a potential vaccine to implant microchips. Well, he was. That's the idea of the immunity passports, or the digital immunity passports with RFID implants. That's true. Or am I now a conspiracy theorist because it's something that he's admitted to and has actually tried testing on animal cadavers? I don't know anymore. The Microsoft co-founder said, "We're going to have to get educated about this over the next year and determine what's driving the conspiracies." It's probably just things that you've admitted and done, and that your foundation with your wife have done, to be honest, Bill. I mean, if you wish to go back and say, okay, here's what we've done. Here is exactly what the conspiracy theories are getting at. For example, those implants. And then say, yes, we do intend to do that for third world countries where it's difficult for them to have the necessary paperwork. And then you go, okay, so any plans to make this more global? So, well, yeah, it would be ease of use, so the more people have it. So, okay. Do you now get the point of where the microchipping idea might have come from? Because that is exactly what you're saying. So, yeah, okay, cool. And in terms of pleading guilty to causing sterility, what's your argument on that? Right, in terms of saying that vaccines will cure overpopulation, what's the idea on that? That the best defense I can think of for that is to try and say, and I'm trying to Iron Man him as best I can here, to say that overpopulation wouldn't be such a concern if people weren't susceptible to diseases which are caused by people being close together, which is a result of overpopulation. So it's not a lack of food, which is what he was driving at, but it's because of viral spread. That's being very generous. Very, very generous. But that'll cure overpopulation by overpopulation not being overpopulation anymore. It takes him out of context and gives him the benefit of a doubt that he didn't think of, but there you go. And what about the polio vaccine being the most common cause of polio in India now? What's your defense for that? Like, if he could just come out and address these instead of just say, oh, they're conspiracy theories, there's nothing to them, they're baseless and it's ridiculous, then you might set a bit more precedence. And then when your wife comes out and says, yeah, instead of addressing these, we're just going to ban them and lobby the government to do our bidding, then understandably, surely we get more than a little bit concerned. Surely. And then you might go, okay, well then what can he do? And to be honest, saying that he's going to investigate where they come from, these conspiracy theories, if it wasn't him, it would sound good. The problem is, of course, that twinned with his wife's idea of censorship and his love of China and joining the Chinese Health Organization again, that what is he going to do once he's found where those concerns are coming from? Is he going to acknowledge them and address them head on, as he had the opportunity here to and didn't, and instead skirted around? Or is he going to continue to do the same and just try to punish those people that disagree with him? That is the concern. But if you wish to give him the benefit of the doubt, then he will actually delve into those conspiracy theories, find out exactly where they're coming from, seeing he's not the chair of Microsoft Co anymore, so he's got free time, and you go, okay, well yeah, here it is, and the reason that Bill Gates wishes to help out the population of the Earth is not for some selfish gain to make his life better, but is just because he's a philanthropist and he's always just wanted to give to other people because he finds himself very fortunate to have born on this planet. And that's it. That's the best that I've got to try and give him the benefit of the doubt. But I'm sure you can see, from what I've mentioned, why those conspiracy theories are there and why they're not baseless. But it seems that is the new thing, isn't it? Since the fraud that went into the US election and, the censorship that came after that, and that's why I've got to be vague about that and not say who was affected or how widespread it was or particulars on how it went on. But seeing as we know that fraud happens, as it does in every election anyway, we're not allowed to know the extent, and it isn't allowed to have a day in court. But since that, saying what you can and can't say, and the responses that we've seen from it, that of course people are going to be nervous about when you say, oh, we've got to do an investigation into knowing where these conspiracy theories come from. Yeah, we're going to be nervous. So please do investigate, address those conspiracy theories head on. They should be easy to debunk and disprove. Actually ask people. In fact, Bill Gates, not that he's ever listening to this, but if you really wanted to disprove those conspiracy theories, then organise a sit-down interview with Dave Cullen of Computing Forever. Let him quiz you for probably a couple of hours. Use evidence of old clips. Dave Cullen is a reasonable chap. He would give you time to explain yourself, but still hold you to task. It will be a fantastic interview. And at the end of that, if what Bill Gates says is true, he would be able to dispel all of the serious conspiracy theories. He really would. And of course there'll be some remaining, but they would be too minuscule that nobody would really be concerned about it. So that's what you should do, if you're really that concerned and wishes to help people out. But that's it from me. So as always, let me know what you guys think down below. Do you think, well, it seems that seeing as Jeff Bezos bought out the Washington Post, on the Wall Street Journal, that Bill Gates is trying to do a similar thing, but indirectly, instead of buying out a media outlet, just going through lobbying because of his wife anyway, because, hey, money is power. Or do you think that the legacy media just hasn't got a clue, and the idea of investigative journalism now falls down to us as individuals instead of the people who actually get paid for it, instead of us as hobbyists? Either way, let me know down below. Always intrigued, hear what you guys have to say, and as always, until next time, have a good one.